I have a history coming from game developers, so I was the head of marketing at Booga. I was there for two and a half years while we launched a bunch of very successful titles on Facebook and then later on mobile. After that I joined a Finnish game startup called Grand Crew, where we developed a game called Supernauts that we launched close to a year ago now. What is an indie? I guess to a lot of people in this room in particular who love games and do games, I would say, I'd say one common mental definition is that indies make really good games. They don't sacrifice quality for commercialness, if that's a word.
How do you define really good game though? Come on.
I don't really, but it's hard to say. But you know, games we like, games that take. I would say maybe let's put it like this: games that take risks, that aren't too, too run of the mill. Indies are not McDonald's. Indies are cool little restaurants on the street corner who make some weird food.
So Clash of Clans and Candy Crush.
They're McDonald's.
They're McDonald's.
They're for everyone.
So they're no
lowest common denominator.
They're no longer indie, obviously.
Sorry?
They haven't been indie for a long time now.
Well, again, I mean, it's a quality debate, right? It's the same thing if you discuss movies. Which is the best movie ever? Is it The Godfather, or is it the movie that made the most money? So
go on, Mike. We've talked about this last. So you tell us what you think is
the best movie ever is Avengers. You can tell because it made so much money.
You changed your tune.
I know. No, it is also the best movie ever.
What was the previous film you used to always say was the best film ever made?
What was the best film I always said?
Die Hard.
Oh, Die Hard is the greatest action movie ever
sorry.
made.
Yeah.
We were talking more general terms. I'm Mike. I'm an indie game dev. I've stopped using the words so much. I tend to not say the word indie anymore. We'll get to that. And I made a game. I used to work in console and social games, Facebook stuff. Back when Facebook games were a thing. And now, in my hobby kind of time, I made a game called Thomas Was Alone, which did pretty well. And now I'm making Volume, which is the difficult second album, a disappointing follow-up. So that's what I'm working on now. In terms of that, I completely disagree with the gentleman to my left, which is going to make for a very interesting conversation. I thought Grand Theft Auto was all right. And Halo, and Call of Duty's pretty fun. I like AAA games. I love AAA games actually. So I'm not sure I'd bring quality into it. I think there's a style, and actually, arguably, I'd say, I think indie is just as susceptible to kind of prevailing genre and style as AAAs. You know, we have, if I think about indie now, I think roguelikes. I think comedy games that are fun to watch on YouTube. I think it used to be pretentious platformers, which I think well out of as a genre.
Anyone know what game Mike did?
Yeah, I made Thomas Was Alone, which is the ultimate pretentious platformer. It's a pretentious platforming squared. So I wouldn't put the quality statement on it, and I think we're just as prone to genre as possible. I think actually, in its current definition, in Europe and America at least, I think indie is a genre. I think indie is a style of game that people are drawn to, maybe a style with a slightly quirky take on an existing genre. Maybe it's got a weird art style. Maybe it's just something that stands out and feels different. So I think on that we agree. Kind of, it's a more unique kind of experience. What I think is very interesting is the definition of indie in music, in film, in games tends to evolve. So it tends to start off as a description of the mode of production. So it's, we were talking earlier about definitions and the idea of an indie game being a game that is made by the people who pay for it is something that a lot of people would have agreed on as that's what indie means 5 years ago. But then a lot of indie games are funded by external partners or by investors. A lot of us now are at a stage where we're seeking investment, working with publishers. If you're working with a publisher, can you still be indie? By that definition, no. But a lot of the games that you love that you would call indie are that because indie has started to transition into a genre. We saw this with film, we saw this with music. I think we're in that difficult transition period. That's my take.
So is Valiant Heart an indie game?
So Valiant Heart's an interesting one. Valiant Heart is, for me, it's just over the fence because it's an internally developed game. I think if Ubisoft paid an external team to make Valiant Hearts without pause, but I think that's a great example of the kind of thing I'm talking about. I think Valiant Hearts, in 5 years' time, we will absolutely refer to that as an indie game, without question or pause, because at that point it won't be about the money anymore, it'll be about the content. So that's where I feel.
So, Marina, is this, because you guys are kind of in this kind of this pocket, exactly, aren't you? Because you are owned, but at the same time your content is almost exclusive, that kind of genre theme. Is that fair?
Yes and no. So for me, it's I guess some would agree with mine, some things disagree. Can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go.
Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes. Hi, I'm Marina, Mello. I'm the commission director over at Bossa Studios in London. We make Surgeon Simulator and I'm Bread. For those of you who like that kind of game.
Very good.
It's a good game.
I'm Bread is great.
Not as good as Avengers.
How about a crossover?
Oh my god, you do it. Do it.
Iron Bread.
Hire me to work on it.
Bread. You heard it here first. For me personally, the definition of indie isn't an indie can't be defined by the size of the budget or the size of the team or the aesthetic of the game. It's more about creative independence, and I guess it fits in a little bit with what Mike was saying. What difference does it make to the team and to the sort of end game? Now, if you're funded by a Kickstarter or via sort of a hands-off publisher like Devolver. So it used to be the case that the only access to funding you could find back in the day was going by a publisher, and that meant you gave up a lot of your creative independence, and that's changed. Now there's so many different sources of funding that mean you can retain that. VC money, a new breed of publishers, Kickstarter, all of that. It means you can still sort of achieve, or retain creative independence, achieve your vision, and yeah, I think that still very much falls in the sort of indie category.
I'm probably also introduce myself because I very rarely do. So I'm Oscar Clark. I work for Unity for most of the time, not all the time. I talk about their gameplay recording, sharing services and their ads and all that kind of stuff. But I also write a lot. I also write a lot about kind of game design and so on and so forth. And I'm kind of a failed indie, really. I'm trying to make games and not quite raising the money. So I'm kind of actually almost trying to do the opposite. I'm going to become a not indie. Getting someone to give me money. I think a lot of this. I think the core of this, I feel we're getting to here, is creative independence is what matters. I'm not sure if everyone agrees with that. Is it creative independence or is it commercial independence? So can you truly have creative independence if you don't have commercial independence?
So what's interesting about that? Sorry. What's interesting about that is creative independence on a company level. Yes, but what we're increasingly seeing is as a lot of us kind of come off the back of a successful game and start building up our team and building up a group of people. My team don't have creative independence. My team have to kind of do what I can tell them to do. But also, obviously, we have the standard kind of company thing of everyone brings ideas, it all goes into a pot, and that's awesome. But at the end of the day, they're not making the exact games they want to make. They're not creatively independent. They hopefully have autonomy and enjoy their jobs, but they're not independent in the same sense.
Would you ever be able to realistically make
every
game that you want and make that a commercial game? Surely we're making a game for the audience.
No, I'm incredibly selfish. I live by the rule that if I make games cheap enough and I make them for myself, I will be able to find a few thousand people who agree with me. That's my logic. And I think that that's where the best stuff comes from. I think the stuff where is less interesting than McDonald's games are the games where people absolutely go, I want this to appeal to these 100 people. I think actually deciding on one audience member and saying I'm going to make the perfect game for them. I made Thomas Was Like for my girlfriend. I made it to make my girlfriend laugh, genuinely. And it did. Thank God. And volume is very much, I'm making that for me as a 14-year-old. I'm making, and I think choosing one audience member, and that audience member can totally be yourself. It's a big world. You'll hopefully find enough people, and the way economics work at the kind of the premium indie kind of end of the market in the US and in the UK, I don't need to find many people, I need to find tens of thousands of people to make that work.
But I wonder if it's because I'm going to ask the others, I know you'll have lots of things to add to it, but the others have a chance to. This whole thing about, you've got a good sensibility, and you've got a vision, and it's important to have that vision, but you guys, you've been involved, presumably, in looking at what audiences are going to think about your game. And do you pay any attention to? Do you consider them? I think that you're
I think I'm very much in agreement with Mike, I have to say. I think you need to, I guess, you know, be aware. You can't develop in a vacuum. You need to be aware of what's happening outside the world, what's happening in platforms, etc., but that shouldn't be the principle from what you develop from. That should be a consideration, the sort of questions you ask as you go about developing your game.
What about yourself?
I mean, it depends very much what you want to accomplish. Like, I really like your view. Like, am I making games for myself, or am I making games for other people? And both are completely valid things, but they're very different approaches. Am I going to do something that I like, or am I going to do something that a billion people like? Right? It's something that kind of irks me a little bit is that there tends to be a snobism, I think, within the indie community, where people look down and like, oh, Candy Crush, ugh. But I mean, it's a game played by a billion people. It's incredibly hard to do that. And it's, you know, sometimes simplicity is the very hardest thing, right? It's a good saying about the Beatles when they wrote I Want to Hold Your Hand. It's 3 chords and the most simple lyrics. And everyone goes, oh, I could have written that in 5 minutes. Yeah, but you didn't. And sometimes that's actually the challenge, right? Seeing the very simple thing, perfecting that, and making sure that something is available. And you know, by that logic, I am sure there's lots of indies by any definition that we're giving up here who are making Candy Crush clones, and they're not considered indies in the indie community because of a commercial approach, I guess.
I suppose I have a slightly different view of it, only because I spend a lot of time doing sort of indie judging for lots of different game awards, and I quite often see games which are clearly the game that the designer wanted to play, rather than a creative work that was intended to be played by others. And so, whilst I totally agree that you've got to have a vision, you've got to have this kind of sensibility, you've got to have something to say, otherwise why on earth does someone play your game? But at the same time, we don't pay attention to the audience, and we don't make a game for people to play, and pay attention to their behaviour as players, then I think we get into real trouble.
So I agree with you. I think there's a middle ground. Sorry, I'm really calling this one. I think there is always a middle ground. It's the easiest argument to make in any argument. A or B? I don't know. A, B? It's an incredibly pathetic play. But, BA, there you go. I'm not going to start singing out VQ. So I think what my point would be is for me a game, I'm making the game for the young me, but I have to test it, that that's working. I have to make sure that I'm achieving my goal. I have a goal, but I have to test it, and that's why I do lots of playtesting. So Volume, I think at this point, has been played by at least 1,000 people. I take it to events. I or a team member will stand behind them with a notepad, noting down everything they do. We're doing more formal playtesting at the moment, which is literally sat in a room with kind of a target audience member and basically just playing the entire game through and finding all the places that she messes up, and then face palming and realizing how stupid we've been to leave those bits in the game. So what playtesting's for is not about finding out, does this game appeal to everyone? It's about finding out, does this game achieve our objective to appeal to the people we want it to work for? Making a game, if you go into a room for 2 years and come out with this pristine object that you say, this is my game, I'm going to make millions, you're an idiot. What you need to do is you need to go into your room, spend, as short an amount of time as you can making this MVP, this minimum viable product, and then start showing it to people. What's fantastic, and what I'm so massively jealous of the generation coming up now, is how available tools are to do that at scale, that we can actually do the analytics, that you can actually look at this. I know there are other tools available, the ones Oscar's trying to sell you, but his are good. I think, that's amazing. You can actually, I'm boasting about playtesting with 1,000 people. You could do that tonight, on the internet. And you won't get the same depth of data as I can get because, well, until they get the webcams filming people as they play, I'm sure they're working on it. But yeah, so I think that data is really useful, and I think, developing in a vacuum is a very, unless you're a genius, but statistically you probably are.
So guys, what do you think? Is this something, is it possible to still have the genius sitting in the room and then coming out with a pot of gold, or is it an ongoing dialogue with players?
I can only speak for Bossa's approach, and very collaborative. We find that we end up with better products by sort of bouncing ideas around the studio and also with our community.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the game hack kind of approach you do? Because I'm not sure if everybody is aware of that.
The game jams.
The game jams, yeah.
So Bossa's got quite a unique approach to sort of creating ideas. Most of our projects come from these internal game jams that we run regularly every month. And it's essentially 48 hours, you know, very few rules. Everyone sort of brainstorms ideas and then goes away and makes it. The only rules, you gotta have someone else working with you and you've got to show something at the end of the 48 hours. And the nice thing is often you get ideas that, you know, on paper may not have sounded like a good one. They actually look great on screen almost every, you know. Iron bread was one of those. It's essentially a piece of bread rolling around the room, very hard to control, and it's trying to get toasted. And, you know, on paper it sounds maybe not like the strongest idea, I admit it. But when we saw it at the end of the game jam, it just came to life. Everyone was laughing, and it was, you know, it was really interesting. So that's and that is very, very collaborative. And that's what works for us. But I can only speak for us. I'm sure there are geniuses out there.
What do you think?
Yeah, well, just like you said, what is the chances of you being a genius, right? For every crossy road, there's 50,000 crossy roads you haven't heard of because they failed and died. So it's very dangerous to become too absorbed into that. On the other hand, again, now A being, it's a very comfortable position. I mean, sorry. On the other hand, if you're just looking listening to your market and asking people, what is it you want, how should we do it, you're going to end up with crap. It's a story about the iPhone. The iPhone would never be designed by having 50 people describing what they want, because people really don't know what they want. So I really like your approach to user testing is incredibly important, and not really asking people, so what would you like in a game? Because then we'll say, well, I like zombies. Okay. And if I can just give a smart piece of hands-on advice to everyone who's doing user testing, something we figured out at our previous company, Grand Crew, how to do it really well. Because we used to do it in a room with people standing over, and we saw people getting nervous. So we just gave them an iPad, and then we had the genius idea, bloody hell, we have an Apple TV. Let's just use the Apple TV so we can sit in the other room on our big-ass TV and see exactly what they're doing. We can leave the people alone. And this works with Chromecast and all these kinds of things. So if you're doing user testing, give that a try.
So I suppose to sort of give the others a chance to ask questions. The last question I'm going to ask you guys is there space for a AAA game? And what is a AAA game nowadays? You know, what do you think? You know, we've talked about indie. What's the opposite of indie?
Your risk appetite becomes so much lower when you've got so much more on the line. So it's not something really that's in our plans.
I think in some ways there's an almost irony to it, though, that the ones who have less budget, the indie kind of theme, as we know, is challenged with the description of the word indie. But if we consider indie to be a genre, essentially that's where the experimentation is happening. Because even though they don't have the budgets, they have less risk. Whereas traditionally, AAA is a marketing budget. It's not a production budget. It's nothing to do with production. It's to do with how much money and effort and programming was spent on getting that content to market through physical retail. So I think this, like Mike said, this transition point we now have like somewhere between 20 and 10 AAA big blockbusters a year. Well, that's kind of inevitable, I think, in this space, and I wonder what it means for the console industry. I wonder what it means for mobile. I infamously said that people making premium games are dead. That's probably not fair, but I think we're in this fascinating space, and hopefully the lessons that we're going to be talking about through the rest of the day are incredible, regardless of the size of the company. And I think the way we're behaving and innovating now is an incredibly important part of what makes this industry interesting, and people should be paying attention to this room in some ways more than what the big product companies. Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think sorry, sorry, I forgot how this works. Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're able to do this stuff, and you know. Oh no, I cut out for a second. That will shift, I think. I think we'll find ourselves in, we're going to see this constant rotation, I think. It's always been the case, it's just we have a word for it now, that kind of someone will make a weird, innovative, esoteric project, and then they'll make some money, and they'll start taking less and less risks, and slowly they'll work their way. You know, Activision started off as a group of indies who banded together because they weren't getting enough credit for their work. You know, that's Activision now. That's the cycle. You know, every developer you ever heard of started off probably making weird little ropey games. So I think that's something to kind of accept and embrace, and you know, realize that we're not going to be cool forever. There'll be a new generation that's cool, and we'll be the boring old evil big corporations.
I think
we'll have money, so you know, it'll be nice. Yeah.
Let's try that. I'm going to just give a chance. We're running out of time, so I just want to give a chance for all to ask a couple of questions. Anyone got any questions out there? So we've got a mic. Do you want to ask a question?
So this is a little philosophical. So is there a difference in someone who works for a big corporation? So say someone makes a AAA game and someone who is an indie developer, for example, does a big developer need to be a lot of, you know, depth expert, as in you are a Unity expert or a really art expert, but the indie developer is more of a jack of all trades? Is there a DNA difference?
Without ever having been an indie, so that makes me a great expert, I would say. As an indie, I mean, you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to do many more things. It's also a smaller team with more control, more sharing of knowledge and things like that that can get lost in bigger projects, bigger games, bigger titles. So you have to be a bit better at everything, I think. And you get paid less, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I'd have to agree absolutely. At Bossa, you know, we've got, you know, almost everyone has got, you know, a core skill set, but also has an interest in other areas. And we encourage that in those game jams, people sort of try their hands at whatever they fancy. So, and often that leads to some really interesting results because you'll approach the same challenge in such a different way. So I think, yeah, jack of all trades.
Yeah, no, boringly, very similar. I think in terms of like intent and emotion, there's absolutely no difference. In terms of like, you know, passion for games, and your average dude making bricks for Call of Duty has exactly the same energy and passion and love of video games as I do. It's across the board. They're just working in a different field. In terms of skill set, yes, there's definitely especially with AAA, because there's well, Assassin's Creed would actually hit 1,000 people more actually in core development on that game. So there you're pushed into a niche, and that's where I used to be. I used to do console games, and I was basically very good at making particle effects. So that was my job. I would go into a level and shit, we need some dust. Okay, to throw that in, and I would be wheeled around various projects within a big company, like, get Mike in, this thing needs some more dust. And you know, yeah, that was my thing. But then, yeah, indie is, I think, really suits the personality type, because I was sat there making all that dust, and then I'd be trying to work my way into other things. I'd be like, can I just like design a level, or like, can I do this, or can I do that, or can I set up that cutscene, or can I do some typography or some graphic design? And what indie allows you to do is to do all of those skills. So it is a jack of all trades kind of profession.
Very interestingly, our CEO Enrique, he was the sound designer in I Am Bread. He very much enjoyed breaking stuff for the purposes of capturing the sounds of breaking bottles and putting them in the game.
Very cool. I can imagine Enrique doing that.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine. So I think we have to put it quits there. Thank you guys, it's been fantastic. Hopefully you guys are in. Before they go, can I just get a hands up? How many people still think you're indie? Hands up. It's about the same, so that's good news. Later on.
I do believe 15 minutes was a little short, so I've tried to compress everything which is relevant in this, so I hope you find it useful. So I saw an initial build of Sociaball at the NASCOM Game Developers Conference in 2013, where Apurva was showcasing it as part of the student showcase. And he was still studying engineering then, he just graduated last year. I really liked the game because it was super simple, it was puzzle and very minimal. And what was really cool was when I went to his stall, he wasn't there, but it was his dad showing everyone the game, and he knew everything about the game, how it worked and everything like that. That was really cool. That was not something we expect at a games conference in India. So I just got talking to okay. So yeah, the game, has anyone here played Soshiball? Okay, a few people. Okay, so there was a trailer in here, but it's not working anymore, so you'll have to... it's an isometric puzzle game about where you have to drag tiles onto empty spaces in grids, and then you have to guide a ball which starts from here and goes up to... you have to guide it to the square goal. So the game actually has this really cool mechanic where you can create levels, and the levels that you create can be shared via Twitter. So that was something I really liked, and I was like, it's a PC game, and I told him that it'll be much better in a mobile game as well, because people kind of people are more prone to sign up their Twitter with the game on a mobile these days. He also had this other game called The Drill Is Gone, which was part of the BYOG thing, which also was really cool, I think. And he had a really nice attitude to game development. He was always looking to learn and grow and do better things and polish the game, which was kind of our attitude to development as well, so we got along really well. So yeah, as I said, we had like-minded values, and I really liked the game, and my feedback to him was like he should definitely try and do a mobile game. So we were on the same page, and I think that's super important for any collab project. Like, we didn't really have any big negotiations about how we should do things or any long contractual discussions. It was just like, hey, I like your game, you like my level design, we can work on this together and make it better. And so that's what we did. The core team was me and Apurva, and then we had help from Ajay, who did the music for the trailer and sound effects. Maya, who helped us with the color schemes, and Adhiraj, who helped us with the trailer editing and stuff like that. So my responsibility was game design and helping him with publishing and things like that. And Apurva did most of the programming and also all the art assets, and also design. So we started the project on 3rd of March in 2014, and we had our final submission on 24th of October. And in between we had like almost a month of downtime, so that's still about 6 odd months of development for a game which seemingly was super simple. So a lot of people asked us like, why did you take so long for this game? It's so simple. So yeah, we get that question a lot. I think so. The main problem was that it was not the same game at all, because the original game or prototype was made in XNA. We had to rebuild it in Unity. The original assets were all 2D. We had to make everything in 3D because we had some ideas for transitions between levels and things like that. So it was like coding an entire new game, and it was good because he could redo, change all the things that he wasn't comfortable with in that. So we switched. Yeah, we worked on, so this was one of the pain points of the project, the UI. We started working on the UI with the 3D components, and because by then Unity's UI wasn't live, and then halfway through when Unity's UI came, we were like, okay, we have to use this because it's going to make it much better. We lost about a month's work because we had to undo everything and then put everything back in. And this to and fro that we did with the UI made a lot of stuff really difficult to debug, and like, it was one of the 2 major sources of bugs in the game. So yeah, if we had the chance, we would not do this again. Also, we had to write our own custom physics because like actual real physics was just too real for the game. Like the ball would lose momentum or jitter when there was a gap between tiles and stuff like that. So it does use physics despite its many limitations and bugs that it caused. Because every time you update it, just went completely crazy. But anyway, it was still great to have these tools. The original game used a TweetSharp plugin, which was for C#, but that plugin doesn't work in Unity, so we had to look for a new plugin. We spent a lot of time trying to do something ourselves, but then we found Prime31's social networking plugin, which worked quite well. It was paid, but was not super expensive, so we went with it. If someone's planning to do something with Twitter, I think it's a good solution, at least for iOS and Android. Their Windows Phone plugin is not up to the mark yet, I think. We structured the code in a way that it would have a lot of reusable components, and like we we tried to do multi-platform code, but now that we are porting, or when we try to look at porting the game to any other device, we realize that I'm not so sure multi-platform code exists in real life. Like, you know, it's a myth. But yes, it's also, it helps, but in the end there's still so much work to do every time you try to port a game. So we are in that phase right now. We're just trying to see if we can bring it to PC or Android or a Windows Phone or something like that. But yeah, it's a lot of work. So one of the things we learned when we were doing all of this is that we have to implement all the systems before we start polishing all of them. So this is something we did wrong in Hubrix. Well, not wrong, but in Hubrix we would at every step we would try and, like, you know, perfect the system and then add a new one. And I think this is something we handled better with Social World, because we added all of the systems in and then we started, like, polishing everything through. So the mechanics of the game actually came from the Twitter idea. So it was a 10 by 10 grid on tiles, and each tile is denoted by a letter in a Twitter string, and that's what the initial idea was. So you could just replace a tile with an empty spot or a different letter, which would mean a different tile would show up there. So it was a super simple idea to share stuff on Twitter, where it would just lead into a garbage like string on your Twitter account, which you don't want. Which is a problem we tackled later. We started using screenshots and we embedded that string data inside the image. But the mechanics of the game came from this tile-based idea. So it was, like, kind of unique, because we usually tend to think of the mechanics first, but this one started with the social feature first. The art, as I said, was originally all 2D and made with Inkscape, but then we were shifting to 3D, so we used free 3D softwares. In the game design, so our major objective with the game was, since we were redoing all the physics, we could add new mechanics. So the original game, the original prototype, had only one ball per level, and this game would allow us to have multiple balls, which meant that we had to redo all the levels, make new levels, and things like that. Also, since it was a touch-based interface, we had new controls and new challenges to deal with on that, since the original game was mouse controlled. Okay. So one of the things that we are, like, super, we advocate heavily is playtesting, and how we do playtesting is something that even the panel spoke about a bit before, is that you don't ask people what they want because they don't know, but you let them play and you watch them. So we always, like, whenever we made levels, we gave it to people and we just watched them play, or we just, you know. So some things we found out from these playtests were that people kind of liked the ball doing, like, weird things, or just, like, going around in unexpected ways. This was something we knew, we predicted that this would happen. But the good surprise was, like, people were happy to experiment with tiles and just see what they do. Like, oh, I'm going to try this tile and see what that does, and oh, I'm going to try the other tile here and see. So that made our job really easier, because that meant that we didn't really have to have tutorials. Like, we wanted people to experiment the level and learn for themselves. So that was, like, a big plus for us. This was really cool. This allowed us to make really cool levels in the game, because when there were multiple balls, people like to see how they interact with each other and what fun things they could do with each other. Like, there are some levels where one ball controls the actions of the other or the paths of the other, and linking these paths together. That was quite fun. Again, this was something we learned in Hubrix as well. Like, you have to make levels that are visually appealing. I mean, even in the solved or in the unsolved state, they should look interesting. They might be challenging, but if they don't look interesting, nobody's going to be interested in playing them. Yeah, as I said, like, the ball interactions were quite interesting, so people like to see weird stuff, and sometimes this looks intimidating, like, whoa, what the hell is going to happen here? But, you know, when you see the ball go through these weird winding paths, people felt some kind of gratification, so that helped the game. So yeah, this was the other thing where the ball kind of, the ball on the left controls the path that the ball on the right can take. Again, with Hubrix, we had made like 400 levels by hand, and we spent a lot of time on that, and this time we were like, okay, we can't spend that much time. But the good part of Social Ball was that it did have scope for user-generated content. our prepackaged levels were much simpler than Ubrix, because we got so many people telling us Ubrix was so hard, like please make something a little easier. So we tried to keep it a little simpler this time. And while getting the game out, we had this mutual agreement that we would never do something that both parties were not completely 100% sold on. So I call it the approval process for approval. And I would run everything by him about publishing decisions or price points or whatever. Another thing we had set aside was that we won't release the game till both of us are satisfied. But that also meant that we're not going to put in that much time to make 500 levels. So there's only 60 levels in the game. We had a level editor with Ubrix, which was poorly designed, and so we eventually took it out from the game. But it was there. It was a tool we used to make the game levels, but I think it was not good enough for user-ended creation. But with Social Ball, that was something we focused on, like the gameplay and how you create the levels should be exactly the same. And so we made sure that how you create levels in the Social Ball is just like playing the game in Social Ball. We did everything the same with Ubrix. Ubrix worked well for us, so here we did everything the same. We spent a lot more time on deciding the first screenshot and the icon, which is something that I would suggest to everyone. Like spend, even if it takes months, spend enough time to make sure that your first screenshot and your icon is brilliant. And now also the preview video, because iTunes allows you to upload the video. That's the decision maker for people. That's what's going to sell your game. We were always active from day one on forums like Touch Arcade and asking people for feedback, on having polls about color schemes and asking other developers for feedback. This helped us in a way that the community knows you exist and what you're doing, and sometimes this also means that the people who are behind the editorial teams of the stores, they're also watching these spaces, they know you exist, they know you have the right kind of mentality. So I would suggest being active on social and forums, things like that. And one thing we learned from, not Ubrix, but the game before that, is don't release on holiday season. If you're a small guy with not much marketing budget, do not release in the holiday season. And that's what we did. We launched on January 15th, and we just hoped for an Apple feature, and we got it. We were featured in US, UK, Canada, Ireland, China, not in India, as usual. We got another mention by the Photonica Indie Showcase on the iTunes front page. That was like our second bump in sales. We already have about 220 levels that are tweeted. These are levels that are going to stay in the game forever. So if someone tweets a level and we retweet it, it stays in the game forever. We have about 4.6, 4.7 store ratings and 79 on Metacritic. We have sold about, we have made about $10,000, $11,000 in revenue so far. It's not much, as you can see, but it's just two of us and it's 6 months, so it's okay. We can live in India on this much. We can make another game or port it to another platform, so we are happy with that. And yeah, so this is something I believe we do every time we end a project. We take inventory of all the stuff we've lost, because there's something wrong with our studio. We always end up losing a lot of stuff in every project. We had to change 4 ISPs, lost a PC, 1 GPU and a hard disk, and other stuff that I lost in Amsterdam. Don't ask about it. And this is all the other stats about the game. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask them. We have time for questions? All right. Questions?
Anyone any questions?
All right.
Or is it, are you feeling that quiet and sleepy? I'll get you jumping up and down if you don't ask a question. So I mean, I'm going to ask you, because you obviously you did the Game Pandas thing,
yeah.
And you're one of the more international in developers I know, particularly from India, but generally you try to be everywhere.
Yeah.
How much benefit do you think you get by being out and about and meeting all those different people from different teams? How does that affect your ability to be a developer?
I think it's more, for me, it's more like an emotional thing. Like, I didn't get any money raised from any of the game founders or any of the other trips. but it just feels good to be part of a community. Like when I go and see all these other developers who are also having the same issues as us, no matter where in the world they are, and most of them have so much knowledge and they're willing to share it so freely. It's actually a really nice feeling. And apart from that, it's always good to be in touch with everybody. And I think if I didn't travel as much as I did so far, I wouldn't have met like many influential people who helped me. They may not have given me money or something upfront, but they have helped me a lot. So yeah, I would suggest going to as many conferences as you can.
And I like to think I know a lot of people, but they all seem to know you, which is great. And the reason I asked that question was really because I think one thing that we don't pay enough attention to is the importance of networking and the ability that that will open up a door at some point, whether it's not necessarily money.
Yeah,
like
I think so. Yeah, it's so. I agree with that. I think you shouldn't like just go up and say, hey, I need money, because that's maybe mostly not a lot of people in this business have money. So don't ask for money. Just ask for just be cool and make friends, not contacts.
And it makes a great industry. Thank you very much for that. It's been great stuff. Oh, we have a question. Right.
And the major difference is with Hubrix, we did a lot more offline tests. Like we sent the game off and we were tracking a lot of data in terms of how long the people took to solve levels and things like that, because we just simply didn't have enough time and options to do in-house playtests. With Social Ball, we did more in-house playtests. Like we went to bars and cafes and like even brought people to our studio and just handed out the game and got people to play them and just watch them play. So
how the offline tests?
I mean, these were the
big question for the
Okay, so yeah, could you?
You said something about the offline tests. Like the second time you went to bars, but the first time you did it was offline. You said
so with Hubrix we did a lot of online tests. Like we just sent out the game link to people and we tracked data. So it was more data driven in terms of not really like metrics, but more like game difficulty kind of stuff. With Social Ball, it was more like like we could watch them play, so it was more hands-on.
Find some sort of a difference.
I think it's much better to watch people play than to just data, because when you watch people play, you see where they get stuck or what part of the UI they're not getting, or they don't get that you have to drag this tile here.
It's worth being aware that there is a potential risk for that, which is that if you're seen observing somebody, their behaviour does change.
Yes, that's true.
And that's a real, you've got to be really careful. So I think balance between the two is what
balance.
I think we have to call it quits there. Thank you so much. So, thank you.
So what I want to talk about is that in making a free-to-play game, apart from the game, there are a lot of other stuff which I feel as indies we generally have no idea about. Shailesh talked about playtesting, about building the game, taking it to the market, but more than that, what we felt was very tough to handle was which tools do we use so that the game is good for scaling up. Is it light on our pockets? How do we take care of everything? How do we collect data? How do we iterate? Because iterating is not a joke. I mean, you need to test on, let's say, 5,000 to 8,000 people, and again get the data and change it and test it again. So you need the right set of tools, and all these big guys have a huge set of in-house and out-house tools that they use to do everything right. So this beast of free-to-play is not only about the game, but a whole set of backend that goes along with it. So, and one guy just wrote all the crash tools available. Actually, he's my friend. I hope he's not here. But yeah, but so the problem is that there's problem in everything. Like criticism, NDK, SDK is paid, and an indie wants something free to start with. Everything has their own issues, and it's very specific to each engine. So I thought, why not cover this so that whatever we tried out, all the tools, shed out some, maybe it can help other guys. So let's start with the backend. Backend, I mean, trying to save user data, syncing user data, and all the FP login. I think PAR stands out completely here. It's something to back up on. It's the most stable thing. And it has easy integrations for all the things, and it has an official Unity plugin too. And the costing is pretty good. It's according to API calls. So if you've not crossed, I think 500K to 1 million users, you would be in the free range, and that's good enough for us for now. Let's see how it goes after that. And analytics is again a major thing, and for us it was really important because our soft launch went for like 3 months, because when we launched it, we saw what was happening in, let's say, 1,000 to 2,000 users, and then we changed a lot of stuff. We saw that people in different regions were expecting localized languages, and we've seen a huge increase in retention once we localized the game in 10 languages. So analytics tools are obviously really important, and Flurry doesn't do everything. So even though Flurry is free and it's like the most reliable one, and I would still suggest to have Flurry just there, I think one more analytic tool like either Localytics or Mixpanel is important. And Localytics is pretty good. It has other things too which I'll cover again. So 10K users stuck, it's free, so it was good enough for our soft launch. But after that we had to again go back to Flurry when we didn't need that detailed analysis on each user. User segmentation is something that really that not many indies try to do. But if you've seen games like Clumsy Ninja, trying to gauge specific patterns, they give you these offers, and it converts a lot. And I think a free-to-play game, you need to make sales inside the game. So user segmentation and trying to target specific set of users and making sales might help in apps a lot. And most of the companies have their own in-house tools, and they don't let it out. So Nudge is a new tool, which is really good, but it's pretty costly. I don't think indies can use. There's something called Fusebox. They changed their name to FusePowered. They have both an ad mediation as well as a user you can target specific users, not show ads to them, target specific users for specific sales and all that. It's pretty decent. It's very new, so it's a little buggy. We tried it, but we avoided in our iOS launch for sure, because they were trying to fix those bugs. But in the Android launch, we are using them. And as a disclaimer, I'm not involved with any of these parties, so I'm not making any sales. Ad networks, I think everyone is pretty clear about ad networks. Ours was a casual game, so we needed enough ad networks because casual games tend to have both revenue from ads and other alternate monetization models more than in-app purchases. So definitely Charboost in movie. NativeX 50K, I put it there because they have this scheme going on where they're giving $50K for indies as a starting package if your retention and everything is good. You guys can try that. Unity Ads has really high fill rates. Good job on that, Aska. So we didn't try it in the first run, in our first soft launch, but when everyone just said that you should go to Unity, and we did that, and really high fill rates. Adcolony still has really good high ECPMs, I would say. Wangal, surprisingly, they have good fill rates in other parts of country, like in India, where not many people monetize. Wangal seems to have enough ads there. Pocket we are trying for our Android. A lot of already Indian game studios are trying that, and it's pretty decent, I would say. Now we are also trying, I'll just get to that. So now we're trying a notch above, we're trying ad mediation platforms, because for each integration and trying to put a logic as to which video ad do we show. So if Unity ads fill rate is gone, show an Adcolony. That was getting a little tedious, and there was no point integrating so many individually and making individual calls. So we went with ad mediation, and that's what we went with HeyZap. HeyZap is good, very good. In fact, their integration is very smooth, and HeyZap has their own network too. And the good point about this is that HeyZap advertisement, especially the video ones, they also show ads of other, not only game ads but other apps and everything. So they tend to, it's ECPMs are pretty good there too. Fusebox, again, as I said, it's an ad mediation platform, and also they have their own ad network. It's pretty new, but good enough, I would say. Veniso is a nice ad mediation platform. We're going to try that in our Android and other games that we are focusing on India. Veniso is good. They have good fill rates in India. They're more specific in India. I think it's an ex-EA guy's startup. It's doing pretty good. So after ad networks and IIP, we also thought on other alternate monetization models that can take place without disturbing the user much. There are a lot of offer walls which look very shitty. We didn't want it to happen because Puppet One was a decently good looking game. So we tried to see which was looking okay. and we tried B7 in our Android launch right now. And B7 is this network by Outfit 7, which owns Tom, Talking Tom, and all that. So it's good. They have some good starting, offers to make. They're making some good free installs in the start. They're promoting games in Talking Tom, which otherwise would be very costly to do. I think this is good even for user acquisition as well as for you to for games to earn enough money. B7 is good. I would definitely suggest that. If you specifically focusing for India, Pocket all is decent enough. It looks a little not that good on the UI front, but I think that's one of the only options for India. We also maybe looked at cross-promotional tools, apart from just Startboost, because Startboost is very, very open, and you send someone a message, they rarely reply. It's becoming, I mean, as huge as it grows, it's very difficult to make deals there. So Line takes up, I think someone from Line here, Line API, it's closed there, they select specifically, and we keep getting these mails from a lot of Chinese local stores, and I think that's okay to get easy installs fast, mostly open. You just need to do some stuff for Android, and it's good. There's this new thing, KT Play, they're fairly open, it's by Yodoman. So they have a lot of other alternate foundation models inside KT Play with ecom and everything. I think we didn't try that on first hand, but we want to. Yes, definitely, but I think, I mean, game design wise also you need to put them in specific good places so that it doesn't really spoil the user experience. And another thing that we felt is that if the user experience is good and the ads are majorly user-initiated actions as in rewarded, the ECPMs start going higher, and that's a very important point, so that the user keeps watching those ads again and again. They don't skip it much. The more they like it, the more these guys increase the ECPMs. The more you get money.
I like that. But actually, it's interesting because a lot of the time I spend is actually, and I'm not going to be, we've got the urban area. I'm not going to be kind of bipartisan about it, but we spend a lot of time talking about how you think about ads placement as a design mechanic, and this idea of realising that you actually want them to look at the ads, you want them to click on it.
Yes, yes.
And then, I mean, how do you approach that? I mean, do you spend time thinking about why someone wants to click?
Yeah, I mean, it's like we feel that watching an ad should be an alternative to some users who do not want to or don't have the ability to pay in-app purchases. So basically, it's like, okay, I'll watch an ad, I'll watch something cool enough, and 30 seconds I can just spend on it instead of paying $1. So let's do that. That's where we put it. So we put it at specific places where user would want more points out of it. We definitely know that he's craving for something more in this game. So that's how we do it. So the whole loop, we put it at places specifically with good enough UI and UX, and not at all inputting, not at all throwing it onto their face. That's how we do it.
And I also think it's an integral part of designing any of that purchase. I mean, there's been some interesting research looking at how particularly optimized ads can actually help sell more content, or at least not cannibalize.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have any experience with that? Have you seen the impact of people being able to access something through watching an ad, affecting whether they're more willing to spend?
So you're asking if more people are able to access more content in the game? Yeah, actually we have this, I mean, a lot of our system, because it's a casual view, pretty clear that in-app purchases won't be on the higher end, taking the general things into consideration. So for any kind of short-term recharges or anything in the game, we had an alternate option of always watching an ad or a revive or anything like that. And that's definitely working out good for us.
Any other questions? We're just going to carry on talking. No. What we'll do, I'm going to say thank you very much for my round of applause.
Thank you, Oscar.
And what we'll do is we'll invite the panel to come and join me. If you guys can come on up.
My name is Colin. I teach game design at GSK Supinfogame in Pune. And I've been in Pune for seven or 8 years now. And previously I was working at a company called Z, where I was creative director.
Hi, I'm Shailesh. I'm the founder and game designer at Yellow Monkey Studios. We've been making games for 8 years at Yellow Monkey now.
Give me around for 8 years. I knew it was a while. So, I mean, to the point, so is there an indie thing? When we obviously hear this a lot, particularly I think on Steam, rather than necessarily on mobile, but we see a look, I mean, for me, the archetype, which, to be honest, bores me, is the 2D, well, it's the sort of 2D pixel art, sideways scrolling thing. And I got bored of platform games in 1985, you know, and you know, with Manic Miners and Chucky Eggs. I don't see it, but I didn't get Nintendo. Why are we focusing on these things that we could have done 30 years ago? Or are we not? Am I? What do you think?
I think it's it could be seen in different ways. I guess. I guess there's a section which is treating it like a genre, and which is like, okay, you know, this is what an indie game should look like. It should be pixelated. It should have this and that. And then there's another section who's like, okay, this is what I can do. I'm gonna do that because sometimes there's a 2D artist on board, and they're like, okay, I can't make 3D models, so I don't want to make a 3D game. I'm gonna make a 2D game. And you don't want to make Curse of the Monkey Island or something where you have to make hand-painted drawings, because that's going to take like 2 years to complete if you're a 2-3 man team. So then many a time you will fall back to something like pixel art and stuff. So I think it's more manageable, and in the end games are about gameplay and the experience that they give. So if it's able to give an experience with that graphics, a lot of indies get away with it. So I think there's like two sides to it.
So it sounds like you're almost saying that it's not about philosophy there, it's actually about practicality. Is that fair?
For me, it's always been that way. So if you've seen Hubrix and Social Ball, they both are minimal, and that's only because we don't have an artist on board. So we always try to make something that we can give a good experience with. It's still polished, it's still good to look at, but it's not art intensive.
Yeah, I think by and large it's a factor of the team's limitation. So you do end up with a programmer on a lot of the indie production. However, if you do happen to have an artist, why not explore that?
And I think in particular, it's basically making a virtue of the limitations. Is that the philosophy?
Yeah, it can be. But sometimes it's also about style, right? I think like the other side is like some people treat it as a style, as a homage or homage to old school games or retro, or playing the nostalgia value. So I think that's also another way of looking at it.
Yeah, so I mean, why is nostalgia such an important part of indie games? I speak to somebody who's been through every iteration of it, you know, professional capacity and personal capacity. And I was playing online games in 1985. I was playing, you know, Elites and so on and so forth, people like pros. I was, you know, and then when I went to do mobile first time round, we saw all those kind of games coming back. We saw all those kind of games coming back again. And then we were on Facebook and they saw all those games coming back again. And now on mobile again, it's all those same games. Have we got no imagination?
Well, I mean, we have to talk about Crossy Roads now, I guess.
Oh yeah.
I love this game. I used to play. I mean, Frogger was one of the first games I played on a PC, but I think Crossy Road has value, and in this day and age.
Well, I should know. We spend a lot of money, but I mean, the key thing is, though, for me, actually, I'll ask Vlad to introduce himself as well and respond to this. My feeling about Crossy Road in particular is that what they did is they transcended the retro. So they went, here's this game mechanic which we know everyone loves. We know these other influences like the endless running kind of thing to affect that, and we're going to realise not what Frogger was, but what we imagined Frogger could have been. Is that fair? And do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sorry for being late. I was supposed to have a talk this morning. Apparently it was rescheduled. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'll just go back. And somebody's like, go to the shower, get out. Oh, by the way, you're on this panel. I'm like, oh, so this is not canceled, it changed. So I just came running here. I'm very sorry for being late. So I love Crossy Road. I love what they did. I love the fact that Matt Hall, one of the better halves of was actually here at NGDC in 2012. He was still just a one-man army, Click Talk. And I followed his development as an independent game developer closely from there on. Crossy Road for me is just the embodiment of effectiveness in terms of design, but also in terms of execution and monetization. I think it's a combination of what you just described, combined with chemistry between developers and just great timing.
I mean, they are an amazing team.
And like you said, like I think we can look at the Flappy Bird phenomenon in two ways. You can look at all the clones, and then you can look at the people that really kind of got the formula, got why Flappy Bird was so viral and successful. Took those, or like took that philosophy that they distilled from it, and then reapplied it to a game experience that I think we haven't properly played in almost a decade on mobile devices.
I find it really interesting because I was lucky I got Matt to sort of a session I was supposed to be doing about UTS, and we were just doing a conversation about design, which was fantastically fun. But the key thing about it was that it's not his first ride on the rodeo. He's an experienced, long-term experienced developer, and that whole team is. And in fact, if you look at the so-called indie titles that we've seen, there's a huge amount of them that come from people who have got huge amounts of experience in terms of console or other platforms. So, I mean, it's this whole indie thing is basically a kind of facade. Is it a joke? I mean, you know, are we pretending that it's indie when actually what we've got is experienced people at the height of their creative ability? What do you think?
I mean, I think there's different types, right? Like there are people who start off fresh and like make great games, but I think it's experience always helps. My idea would be that I think it always helps to have some knowledge already, because otherwise you're making mistakes and learning on your own time, and it's probably better to do it on someone's time who has the money. So
I believe it showcases that it's actually a spirit, and that even experienced, seasoned developers that are used to churning out really polished products, they endeavor to sometimes go back to the roots and pay homage. The other thing I found interesting is that Epic, one of their tutorials for the editor is a Flappy Bird clone.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great thing, isn't it? I mean, even on an engine like that, I'm not going to be, you know, partisan on it because I'm friends with people like Red, so he'll kill me like them. But you know, that's the really important point. You have these engines and they want to play around with what they want to, but they want to show the kind of emotional. So I mean, moving on from that, I mean, so experience matters. Thinking about the business of games seems to matter. That seems to be slightly odd with some of the things we talked about earlier. This idea that I've got a vision, I'm going to share it, but also the idea that anybody can do it. I mean, we're really in this world of democratizing game development, which is obviously really cool to users thinking, but generally thinking.
Yeah.
You know, is there still an opportunity to start now and learn?
I'm a huge fan, and I think that's why it's cool to be here in India. I'm a huge fan of game companies that use the work for hire model to stay stable. And like you said, learn over other people's backs, Shailesh, and then take those fundamentals and apply them to your own ideas. That's a safe bet. Not everyone is Matt Hall and Andy from Well. Not everyone can aspire to be that. Not everyone is Rami Ishmael from Columbia. Not everyone is as capable, like has those connections or is capable of thinking that the principles. I think that what comes with experience is the ability to distill, and this was a great talk by Alexander Bush that I think touched a lot of people that I spoke to here as well, is remove the luck element and really distill the core principles that came down to what defined success for particular titles. Do your research. I think that the powerful thing about being indie now is not so much being your own boss and having freedom and whatnot, but having the liberty of extensively analyzing everything that's out there, distilling those formulas. And that comes, once you're experienced, it's easier for you to see those patterns. If you're not that experienced, you just have to put more research into it. But I talk to indies, I talk to developers, and I ask them, okay, how much market research have you actually done? How have you looked at your competitors or your sources of inspiration, like cross-you, right? And it's increasing. The number of people that are telling me, well, you know, we've looked at 20, 25 games, we've mapped them out. That acknowledgement that marketing starts from day one, and the acknowledgement that you need to understand how monetization is going to be part of the overall experience, that's becoming an integral part of the design process, the design philosophy from the first day. And that's, I think, what the most powerful element is with indies now that can still allow them to succeed even though they just got started.
So I largely agree with that, but there's a really interesting comment made yesterday that the Indian developer market hasn't got the baggage. Because we're dealing with a marketplace where everyone's fresh, relatively fresh with touchscreens.
So you have to teach yourself. So you have to analyze and do that research. And if you do that, you can surpass even the most veteran of veteran individuals. Because let's be honest, you know, up until a couple of years ago, I think when NASCOM mapped the Indian game industry in 2012, they mapped out 200 companies. They were all console focused. Right nowadays, you can make a game in a month, and if you just design it properly, it can explode. So what does that tell me? Like those console people will not be able to make that jump as quickly as a young, naive individual that just crunches, reads the articles, reads the coverage, comes to these talks, and applies those principles.
So Colin, I mean, you're dealing with academia as well, aren't you? So, you know, how much of that kind of preparation do you think the sort of current generation of developers get? You know,
it's one of the first things we do when they join. They go through a massive chunk of video game history, so that their inspirations are more long drawn. They don't look to clone like last success. They can look back at really long-lasting successes and educate themselves.
Well, that's I think really I think worth too. I was talking to Bithell in Italian last week, and Jury from Rovio was talking about how it's a much safer bet to take an existing free-to-play game, reskin it and launch that than anything else. And it strikes me that that's a fundamentally bad idea, because it's the law of diminishing return. Shouldn't we be looking further back, like you say, and trying to find ways of reimagining the potential for the gameplay first, and then apply the business model? Does that make sense or not?
Incidentally, I used to clone games. I mean, not it wasn't my decision. Like, it was part of the mandate. Yeah. But so.
But is cloning inevitably bad? That's what I'm wanting to say.
Sorry.
Is cloning inevitably bad? Is the question really?
If you're starting off, yeah. I mean, if well, it's just 100% cloning.
Yeah, exactly. What is a clone? Is the other question, I suppose.
That's good. That could take this entire panel. I wouldn't go into that.
You'll need a mic, by the way. So.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry, that could cover this entire panel. I wouldn't go into that. I'll keep it super short. I just spent a year in Finland, which gave me a very different perspective on being indie, because there, the amount of social support that you have from the government, added with the amount of giant ass taxes that you pay, means that you can take any risk and you will end up most likely getting 75% of your salary for the 6 months of unemployment that follows if your company goes bankrupt. So there's a very different mentality, and the definition of risk is completely different from what you guys have to face here in India. And that said, the company that I work for, and I left back in February, so I can't disclose too much about what's going on there, but when I was there, one of the main things I had to fix was the reputation that the company had, that we had cloned Counter-Strike on mobile. That's not true. Counter-Strike is a 1.5 gig executable file for PCs. The game that Quick Force made was a 50 meg file that had the same kind of gameplay experience with different controls and whatnot. So that's where I draw the line with cloning, is like you can take a concept and reimagine it on a different platform, and then it really comes down to the basics. But if you can bring a new element of experience to a new audience, then the cloning is justified in my perspective, because you're reaching something that maybe the original creator never had. But let's just stop the discussion there. Because it's a completely different pattern.
Well, we'll see if the audience think that later. I mean, let's go a little bit further. I think it is worth going into this, because, I mean, I think let's throw in a dose of realism. When you look at the average revenue a game gets at the moment, particularly on ION, it's something like $5,300 or something. But when you look at the median revenue, it's around $400 for the lifetime of a game. So, you know, obviously there's the games that get into the higher echelon can make the literally big, but the middle game is making about $400. And the average cost of making a game is something like $25,000, $30,000.
So, are you basically subsidising the game industry by your records? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's trying to make the billion-dollar game, right? So, in a way, yes, you are subsidizing the success of the billions. I mean, but the advantage I see that we in India have is that, as I said, with our game, like we made about $11,000. That's enough for a two-man team to live for a few months. So I think it's still okay for us to, we should be more risky is what I'm saying. Like we have the liberty to be more risky. Obviously, yes, we don't have the social security that Vlad was talking about, but we have the advantage of being able to live at much cheaper, so we can try a lot of things. We should.
The cost of living is a major factor in potential for being able to unleash that kind of creative potential.
Yeah, that's what
Are you seeing the same thing? Is it the cost of living? Is there enough kind of incentive, risk? Do people understand the risk they're taking?
I haven't been in India myself, so I can't speak about the risk. However, I think if you're going to go down that road, you need to dedicate time, and your thought process, like from the onset, should be geared towards marketing. If you're not thinking that way, why are you doing it in the first place?
Well, it always comes down to having a vision.
creative expression.
Creative expression, yeah. But it's having a vision and having an audience and using your creativity to connect the two. I mean, it might.
You can use your creative expression towards reaching the goal. Yeah, financial success.
So, there's two sides to this. To follow up on what was just said, in terms of risk. So, I spent the last year in Finland, right? The company was bootstrapped. We did a total startup turnaround. I sacrificed my salary from March onward in return for equity of the company. I lived in the office. I had no rent. I lived off of €200 a month, total, right? For personal expenses and groceries. So, there's a lot of examples like this. Like our good friends, Stefan at Forst in Denmark, they spent 9 months, or no, they spent up to 7 or 8 months living in the classroom at their university that apparently wasn't used. They slept there, the entire team. They saved thousands upon thousands of euros or dollars on rent for that time. And that's what got them. You know? But to add to what was just said, yeah, I mean, that you just have to kind of like be prepared for the consequences, I would say, and have a support network. I'm actually going to be talking about that at my talk. So quickly, just did you like? I'm replacing Vladimir Frutikov in the schedule, so one Vlad replaces the other. But I'll be talking about that in more detail in my talk as well, because you know, I think it's with the marketing part. Nowadays, people are designing games for PewDiePie. That's what I mean. Like from the day one marketing, you're designing it to be enjoyed by YouTubers because that's a marketing channel. That's a business plan right there. It's like a one-sentence business plan. Design your game to be fun for YouTubers, and then try to aim for getting at least 5 million YouTube views. If you have a 1% conversion rate, that means that you're guaranteed to have 50,000 copies sold on Steam.
Well, I mean, that's directly to across your record. The whole strategy of getting all your friends to convince PewDiePie to check out your game because you made his dog in the game. That's pretty cool. Anyway, so let's ask some questions. We've only got a couple of minutes left. And we're going to do questions first. Anyone brave enough? Ah, we've got one there.
Hello, my name is Suknya and I'm a student. I'm actually studying game design at Rubika Supinfogame. So my question focuses on the general aspect of a game design. How to maintain a balance between fun and frustration level of a game? Let's say for an example, Flappy Bird. How to maintain a balance between fun and frustration levels on a game?
Playtest.
Test.
But it's also, isn't it, a little bit to do with what is the emotion you're trying to create? And I think, you know, the difference between Flappy Bird and maybe some of the other games is the deliberate focus on frustration and the recognition that people have a natural learning curve and that their reactions will respond to that. So starting out knowing that that's how people will respond to a physical based, you know, technique allows you to then frame the tests that you're going to take. Whereas if you're thinking about, social or hubris, that's a different kind of emotional response.
How much time did you spend on testing?
Testing? Rubik's we were in testing for almost from day one till almost launch.
Hours, man hours.
Man hours.
Concrete people.
Centuries.
And we had 5 people testing it for like 12 months.
Let's imagine 1 hour a day. That's 365 hours a person times 5. That's a lot of hours. Okay, so there you go. My tip, if you make a game that is feasible for YouTubers, go for the guys that have only 100 subscribers and send them an early build. And you will see their reaction on video. If they use a camera and you see their face, you can exactly see how they react to specific points of their game. And show it to people here. I've playtested over 20 games in the last 24 hours here. And you will get unsalted, honest feedback from me, which you will not get from friends and family.
See, that's one thing that people using every play as well. So, things like One Epic Night, they were telling us that they couldn't find a particular part. Because they were doing a gameplay recording and they had to face the guide, they actually managed to find the part. And they also knew why the guy was having a struggle on there to find it.
Crowdsourcing.
Exactly. All that kind of stuff's great. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Great. Any more questions? You've got time for just one more. We're all looking shy this morning. It sounds like we probably needed coffee or something like that. So what we're going to do is we've got literally 2 minutes of a coffee break left. So grab yourself a coffee or a quick break. Come back here for 12, or hang around, and we'll kick off with the next speaker. So thanks very much to the panel. I think it's been really useful. Hopefully